Sonic Cafe was a mobile phone service exclusive to Japan that ran from 2001 to 2007 and cost 315 yen per month. The service included a ton of downloadable games for its members to play on their phones. Think of it as Game Pass or PlayStation Plus, but with Flash games. It was only available on 2 mobile networks though, FOMA and iMode, both of which still exist and are set to shut down in March 2026, but there's no way to sign up for plans supporting them. And even if you did find a way to do so, the Sonic Cafe service has been shut down for over a decade, so that's not really much help. Being such an obscure service that we no longer have access to, a lot of its contents have been entirely lost, and it's a real shame. Now, despite being called Sonic Cafe, the library it provided wasn't limited to Sonic the Hedgehog titles. They gave just about every Sega IP a game, including Samba de Amigo, Knights, Phantasy Star, and even Billy Hatcher. Puyo Puyo definitely got the most love outside of the Sonic series though, with almost a dozen versions being released for the service. Almost all of these non-Sonic games are missing though, with small evidence of their existence and not much more. Plenty of Sonic games are missing too, but a solid amount of them were recovered, and today I'll be taking a look at all of them, from the start of the service in 2001 to its inevitable demise. 2001 saw the release of only a couple games, the first of which was simply titled Sonic the Hedgehog. Though many games share that name, this version doesn't have high-speed levels or cross-species romance. Rather, it served as a 10th anniversary celebration for the character and gave members a slew of Sonic-themed applications. There was a Sonic clock, some ringtones featuring tunes from Sonic 1, and an exclusive standby image. The highlight though was definitely this small Sonic game, where you would collect as many rings as you could and reach the end of the stage before time ran out. At least, that's what I gathered from the archived webpage for the game. No playable version has been found to date, just these select screenshots and snippets of text that explain how some of it works. What I find kinda weird is that some websites list the ring collecting game as something separate and the other applications under the title Sonic Watch. I have no idea if these were separate downloads or not, but what I do know is that the official website describes them in the same page and under the same title, so that's what I'm going with. The only other game to release that year was Sonic Tennis. Not Sega Superstars Tennis, Sonic Tennis. This one actually has a playable version available, not the OG version, a re-release that plays the same, and down in the description you'll find a download link for it, along with every other game I was able to find. You can't just run them from the .jar file though, you have to download an emulator that supports the file type, and I'll go over the options for that later in the video. For now, let's focus on Sonic Tennis, which you'll notice shares a lot of common assets with the Game Boy Advance hidden gem, Sonic Battle. This is a common trend with these games. Most of them reuse models and textures from GBA Sonic games like Sonic Battle and Sonic Advance. But it didn't start out this way, since those games didn't release until a few years in, but the versions we have available today are updated ports that heavily borrowed from them, and that's a good thing. It makes them feel so much higher quality, and plus, I'll never get tired of the stylistic charm of Sonic Battle, and seeing it more is nice. Yeah, that's the only thing about Sonic Tennis I consider to be nice. It's super simple. You move around the court, hit the ball with a properly timed button press, and can aim and give additional power to your shots. This is done by holding the hit button in direction before you hit, but it's damn near the clunkiest thing I've ever had to do. Sometimes it won't register that you click the button until it's too late, other times you'll be locked into a charge and unable to move, and then there's the times that you do everything right and the ball just disagrees with you. Like, okay. I eventually thought I was getting the hang of it, but every couple shots I was making dumb mistakes and just raging because I didn't do anything wrong. That's mostly the fault of the emulation, because it wasn't designed to be played with the mechanical keyboard. I'm sure on one of those old phones it works okay, but playing it like this is super janky to a point that it's nearly unplayable. And there's not even any music to make it any better. There's some sound effects when you win or get a game over, but during gameplay, the game stars 3 opponents, each of which you have to beat in a best of 3 match. The first is Tails, who I've beaten a couple times now and actually have a decent time playing against. And then you play Amy, and I swear to God she's impossible to beat. Whenever I serve the ball, she returns it, gets centered, and hits every single ball. I don't know how to score. When she serves, you can aim the opposite side and sometimes get an easy point, but when she's not serving, you just don't win. The last match is against Knuckles, and I can only imagine how annoying he must be too. For what it is, this one's fine, but apparently back then it was really well received because in 2002 they went all out with Sonic sports games. Now, a lot of these games are missing, so I'm going to start with covering the ones we know least about and eventually get to the ones we can actually play. Sonic Golf was the first to release this year, and from the screenshots out there, it just looks like a lousy version of NES Open with Sonic on the cover. These images look bland as hell, so maybe it's best this one's left forgotten. I thought I found a download for it, and after playing it and having a lot of fun, I realized it was the wrong game. Sonic the Hedgehog Golf came out in Europe in 2009 and wasn't part of the Sonic Cafe service, but I have to say, this one's pretty good. If you're taking the time to try out some of these games, I'd recommend giving this one a download. Each course looks like a real Sonic stage, with multiple iconic set pieces to interact with, branching paths, and familiar locations. It's got a lot going for it. Despite the 2002 Sonic Golf being pretty lame, however, a follow-up application was released later that year called Sonic Golf C-Mode Cup, which features the same core gameplay but with new courses. What's cool is that this one was made as part of a deal Sega made with Coca-Cola. After playing 9 holes, players would receive X amount of C-Mode points. Each one was worth 1 yen, with a maximum of 1,000 per user, and they could be spent on drinks from any Coca-Cola vending machine. That's such an awesome concept. I would have loved that when I was little. Gaming on my phone for free pop? Yes. There were 2 of these events ran in 2002, and after the final one concluded on December 25th, the game became unavailable and has been so ever since. Merry Christmas! Speed is another missing game, but it's just a standard Sonic card game. That's it. Nakayoshi Chow was a version of the Chow Garden you could play on your phone, and why the hell isn't this something they've tried present day? Seriously, even if it wasn't very good, do you know how many people would download it solely because of their nostalgia for it? It seems so obvious. There's so much potential for a modern revival, especially for smartphones. Come on, Sega, get your head in the game. This Sonic Cafe version is gone, with only a few screenshots and descriptions of the gameplay remaining, thanks again to the archived webpage. Apparently, you could pet your Chow, talk to it, download special wallpapers, and play simple games like rock, paper, scissors. Not much to it, but if something like this was released on the App Store today, lots of people would have fun with it. Next, Sonic Bowling, which looks interesting. It supported up to 4 players, which was a first for the Sonic Cafe lineup, but beyond that, it's bowling. You could adjust the direction, spin, and power, and instead of rolling the ball, the character themselves would roll down the lane and hit the pins, but there's no footage of it actually happening, it's just mentioned. From there, we got Eggman no Kazwate Panic, which is essentially Brain Age. You have to solve number-based puzzles before a bomb goes off, with some help from Tails. There's Sonic no Jirai Sagashi Game, which is a Minesweeper clone, and Sonic Racing Shift Up, where you race on a straight track and win by shifting gears using your number keys as fast as possible. Now to some of the stuff we have footage of, but no way to play, courtesy of this guy. He dumped a ton of footage on YouTube, and it's because of him we can get an in-depth look at how some of these lost games would play, so thank you. I'll have all of this footage linked down below for those of you curious and taking a closer look for yourself. The only one for this year is Sonic Billiards, which looks like your standard billiards game. No twist to how it's played, nothing special about it at all, just billiards. I will compliment its music though. It's an 8-bit remix of the Casinopolis track in Sonic Adventure, and I like it. The 2 games playable are Sonic Fishing and Sonic Racing Kart. Both available versions aren't the original releases, rather they're ports with slight graphical improvements, but the core gameplay remains mostly unchanged. Sonic Fishing features 3 stages, each with a score requirement that's higher than the last, and that's literally all that differs. They look the exact same and have nothing that makes them feel like a Sonic environment, it's just your average vegetated body of water. Not even the fish have unique designs. The only thing that's Sonic themed are the lures. There's one for Sonic, Tails, and Eggman, but I'm not entirely sure what the difference between them is. What does make a difference is the time of day you play. It would actually sync up with your phone's clock and adjust the spawn rate of fish, with them being more populous in the early morning. Neat. Gameplay involves finding a spot that has a lot of fish, casting your lure there, then reeling it in until you hit one and have to fight for your life. You mash enter as fast as you possibly can, making sure not to get the meter too high and snap the thread, while you push whatever direction the arrows say on screen, until boom, you catch the fish. Seems pretty easy, but not when you don't know how it works. I read the archived website and translated it said, quote, press the enter key to raise the gauge and release it to lower it. It didn't say spam the button as fast as humanly possible. So I tried it like that for a couple minutes until I got fed up with it, started to mash the button, and it started working. So I guess violence is the answer sometimes. I have to give this game the biggest troll ever award as well, because as I was using that first method, I did catch something after about 10 minutes of trial and error. Yeah. I did eventually figure it out, but it was still difficult, given that there's only 20 seconds to meet the score requirement, but it thankfully stops you when you enter the fighting phase, and if you catch something, you get a couple extra seconds. I made it all the way to the final stage, but didn't hook anything big enough in time and failed. In the previous stage, though, I got more than the final stage's requirement, so in a way, I beat it, just not consecutively, and I really don't care. It's not a very fun game, despite what the webpage will have you believe, but I will say this port does look pretty nice, and the 8-bit Big Fishes on Emerald Coast remix that plays throughout is a really nice touch. Then Sonic Racing Kart, which is pretty solid all things considered. There's 5 total tracks, and each one is named after a Sonic character. They're in no way designed with that character in mind though, they're just standard tracks, with the same colored roads and environments. Each one is super plain and takes less than a minute to beat. I couldn't tell you which one is which if I tried. Driving is very simple. The car automatically moves forward and all you do is turn left and right, making it very easy to pick up and play. You can also choose what you want your view of the track to be. It can be locked on your vehicle and turn as you turn, or it can stay still and let you watch your car turn. Nice option, never picking it. In total, it takes about 5 minutes to do everything, but back then, you could download other people's time trials and race against them, which definitely adds a lot of replay value, and for the time is very impressive, let alone for a handheld game. Okay, that's all for 2002, and that's a lot of games, but don't worry, no year after this saw nearly as many Sonic games come to the service. Breaking up this year the same as before, Sonic Putter, Speed DX, Sonic Reversi, and Tails No Flying Get are all non-playable, lacking in footage, and about as forgotten as can be. Sonic Putter is a mini-golf game that has a couple gimmicks up its sleeve. You can make the ball jump, break certain walls, and use warp panels, which I'm sure made for some pretty fun courses. We have no way of knowing for sure if it did or not, but we do know that courses were added to the game occasionally, and it let you upload your scores to an online leaderboard. Again, really cool features for the time. Speed DX is listed under multiple years and names on the timeline, but it's just an updated version of the Speed game that came to the service in 2001. Not much else to say about it. Sonic Reversi isn't a racing game where you drive backwards, it's a Sonic-themed version of the Reversi board game, which I didn't know was a thing. You can play multiplayer too, which is always something worth mentioning. Then Tails No Flying Get, which is based on the Sonic Battle minigame Fly and Get, with the goal of collecting 20 rings as fast as possible. In Sonic Battle, it was multiplayer only, but here it's just a single player version that allows people to practice from their phones. That way, when you and your buddy whip out your Link cable and Game Boy Advances to duke it out, you can kick their ass. The Sonic Fandom website lists Flicky as part of Sonic's lineup on the service, but other sources don't, though I figured I'd still mention it. It's a port of the 1984 arcade game, and that's all we really know about it. No clue if it's good or not. There is Sonic Cafe footage of it, but I didn't notice any differences. The only game we're able to play from this year is Sonic Darts, but not the 2003 version, the downgraded version that was ported to Sega Mobile. Plays the same though. All you do is move the cursor to where you want it and try to time out the left-right meter and the power meter, both of which stop with the same button press. Then you throw the dart, rinse and repeat, taking turns with your opponent until you run out of throws, at which point the player with the highest score wins, and boy does Shadow hate losing. Damn. It's a pretty quality game, more fun with the second person, but definitely the best one I've been able to play so far. That about wraps up 2003. Overall, the lineup isn't as good as 2002's, but we still saw some pretty decent titles come out, and I consider it another solid year for the service. 2004 saw only 5 titles come out, 4 of which are no longer playable, but these 4 all have gameplay footage available, again uploaded by this channel. Sonic Hearts doesn't have you performing open heart surgery. Instead, it's another card game. Sonic Panel Puzzle is a puzzle game where you try to get the entire image flipped to the proper side, featuring characters with their glorious Sonic battle models. Sonic Gammon is an epic battle between Sonic and Eggman, in some board game called Backgammon. And Sonic Hopping 2, a game that plays the same as the first in the series, and that game is still playable. Well, a port of it is, not the real deal. Regardless, this is a really fun puzzle game. Your goal is to collect all the rings on a given stage as quickly as possible, avoiding the bottomless pits. Each field is laid out in a grid, and Sonic can only move in a very specific way. He can hop forward, left, and right 2 spaces, or back 1 space. This makes you have to think through your approach to each level, and it's really fun. I like this one a lot. Obviously it's my favorite of the year, but it's probably my favorite one yet. While 2004 was really a step back when compared to the previous 2 years, Sonic Hopping and its sequel kinda make up for it. They're great mobile games. The following year, we got 6 games, and there's at least gameplay footage of all of them. Sonic no Diafuguo is another card game, this time the game Millionaire, which I haven't heard of. Sonic Reversi Hyper, the sequel to 2003's Sonic Reversi, but from what I can tell, nothing was really added to it. They look almost identical graphically, and the only difference I noticed was that this new version can rank players online, and I think that's it. Amy No Page 1, not a Sonic fanfiction missing its front page, rather a card game that's a hybrid of Uno and Crazy 8s. Actually looks pretty fun. Sonic Kart 3DX is a sequel to Sonic Racing Kart, now with 3D visuals and tracks that look pretty interesting. It's not just green backgrounds and bland scenery, they've actually got themes reminiscent of Sonic stages, it looks great. This is one I really wish I was able to play, but it is what it is, and these next 2 are both totally playable. The first one is another game simply titled Sonic the Hedgehog, but this time it's a port of Sonic 1. Now, I've never actually beaten the first Sonic game. One of my darkest gaming secrets, I know, but I don't think I'm wrong to say that this is a very viable way to do so. I don't mean today, there's dozens of better ways to emulate it, or you can just play it on your smartphone for free, but for a 2005 version for cell phones, it's pretty good. It's not without its fair share of issues though, starting with the camera, which is way too zoomed in and makes it super hard to see things up ahead when moving quickly. And the staggering amount of music glitches and audio bugs can really break the immersion, but they don't break the game. It's still Sonic 1, it's a good time, and while I'd personally skip it if I was trying out the Sonic Cafe library nowadays, which I am, so I'm kinda contradicting myself, but if I wasn't doing a complete retrospective, I'd pass on it. However, if I was subscribed back in the day, I probably would have beaten this game already. And finally, the last game of 2005, Sonic Jump, and it's been totally recovered as well. This game is very simple and straight up fun. Sonic continuously jumps and you move him left and right to avoid enemies and land on higher platforms. You can also press select to give your jump a little boost and reach higher ground. There's a ton of levels with varying themes and a steady increase in difficulty, which is nice. There's even a story to go with it, and while it's not much more than Eggman trying to destroy and Sonic saving the day, it's there and I'll give it credit. There's a real quality spike in this game when compared to the other Sonic Cafe titles. It seems to be the most polished and complete one yet. And it didn't die with the rest of these games either. There's an app called Sonic Jump Pro, and it seems to be an expansion of what this game establishes. I'm not gonna buy it, it's $3 and I've had my fix, but it definitely works well as a mobile game. I just don't see myself playing it when I never leave the house. And when I do, I have Sonic Mania. The games have been more scarce these last couple years, but it seems like there's been a title or two that really stands out, more so than 2002 and 2003. It's not just sports games and card games, it seems like they found some things that work for them, and I hope they keep this trend moving forward. There's not much time for that though, because 2006 was the last year to see a full lineup of games come to the service. In total, 6 games released this year, and they all have at least footage available, but unfortunately, half of them are just basic card games, so that aforementioned trend is gone before it even started. Sonic Speed DX is yet another revised version of Speed, Sonic no 7 Narave is a Japanese version of Sevens, and Sonic no Napoleon is, you guessed it, Napoleon. Of the remaining 3 games, only one isn't playable, and that's Sonic Golf 3D, which looks to be way better than the first 2 Sonic Golf games. I like that they started off with basic sports games with 2D sprites, and eventually made some 3D sports games that are a little more in-depth. It's a shame that none of them are playable, but there's a noticeable upgrade in the quality of these sports games, and I've got to give props. They also ported the Mega Drive version of Sonic 2, which was split into 2 parts, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 Dash and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 Crash. There's a ton of levels missing though, including Chemical Plant, Aquatic Ruins, and Oil Ocean, among others. It's a very watered down version of the game, needless to say, and it suffers from all the problems the previous one had, but it's so much clunkier and worse. I'll admit I've played less Sonic 2 than I have Sonic 1, so I'm not super familiar with how all of it is supposed to feel, but it's not supposed to do this, I don't think. So yeah, 2006 was kind of a bust for Sonic Cafe, and it's not really a big surprise that it was shut down the following year, but I did save the best game for last. Shadow Shoot was a game made to promote the newly released title Shadow the Hedgehog, and considering that game's undeniable quality, this game turned out to be pretty alright. Shadow runs forward automatically, and you use the up and down buttons to navigate between 5 lanes, avoiding pits and the back arrows that slow you down. When you hit a forward arrow or ramp, you zoom forward into a ball and can wipe out enemies, and it's pretty satisfying to keep a fast pace. If there's an enemy you can't avoid or kill with speed, you can press select and shoot them, hence the namesake, but the amount of times you need to use this move is minimal. There's a boss at the end of each stage, and that requires you to use it a lot, but outside of that, I rarely found myself actually shooting. And speaking of the boss fights, all you do is stay in one lane and spam fire. The obstacles you blast will drop rings that keep you alive, and you'll eventually destroy whatever robot. It has all the makings to be a really solid game, but unfortunately, it was a bit too ambitious for its hardware. It is really difficult to respond to obstacles in time, both because of your limited view and how blurry things get when you're moving quickly. And I don't know if it was just me, but in emulating this, movement kept locking in certain directions. When I tried to move up or down a couple lanes, it would essentially glue me to that wall. Then in spamming the opposite direction, I'd do nothing, then fly the other way and take damage. Like, why? I'm sure when playing on the intended hardware there's no issue, but you can't play it like that today, and that leaves the game severely crippled. It's still good though. Not as good as Sonic Jump or Sonic Hopping, but it's definitely up there. All in all, 2006 was a very disappointing year for the service, and it was clear it wouldn't last much longer. In 2007, 2 more games came out and the service eventually shut down for good. Sonic no Casino Poker is one of those games, and there's not even gameplay footage of this one. What the game offered though is right in the name and pretty self-explanatory, but the one I'm more interested in is Sonic no Heigen Resha. There's some gameplay footage of this one out there, but nothing we can actually play. The premise was simple. Eggman kidnapped a bunch of animals to build Eggman Land with, somehow, and Sonic has to chase after his train to free them. Hold on, is this like a reference to Radical Train in Sonic 06? I'm just now realizing this came out after that game, so there's a chance it's kind of made in reference to that, but I don't know. Look, I didn't say it made a lot of sense, but it does enough to justify the gameplay. It actually looks like the most true 3D Sonic game the service got. The player could move in any direction and spin dash, which is a decent moveset. Movement was weird though. When you press the up key, he begins moving forward, and from there, you can change direction by clicking left or right, bring him to a complete stop by pressing down, or give him a burst of speed by pressing enter. The levels look very straightforward, but it still looks like a really interesting game that I'd love to try out. And that's all of them. The entire library of Sonic games to come to the Sonic Cafe service. And that's a lot of games. This has been quite the journey. But hang in there, we're almost done. Apparently there was some physical media associated with the service as well, most notably the paper crafts. Sonic Team made a bunch of these designs that were available for purchase at Lawson locations in Japan, using their iPrint service, and a few were exclusive to Sonic Cafe. And I've got a question, how the hell did people actually make these? Like, kudos to them, seriously. There's also mention of a jigsaw puzzle people could download, but I don't know if you printed it, had the ability to buy it somewhere, or something else. And yeah, I think that's everything. After Sonic Cafe shut down in December 2007, it was merged with Sega Ages, another subscription-based library of mobile games. The two services combined to create Puyo Puyo Sega, and while it had a decent number of Sonic games as well, that'll have to be a topic for another day. If you want it to be, let me know. Most of the playable versions of Sonic Cafe games we have today are thanks to its Western counterpart, Sega Mobile. Almost every Sonic Cafe game that was ported to Sega Mobile has a .jar file available for download, and that's how I was able to try them out. If you're interested, again, all the download links will be down in the description, as well as a link to the emulator I used to run all the files. You have a few options, but K-Emulator is definitely the best when it comes to running these older games. The other ones have like weird phone borders that cut the edge of the screen off a lot of the time. This one lets you adjust the ratio of the window to make sure every game you play is in its proper resolution. It's not perfect, but it's the best there is. And seriously, thanks so much to this channel for all the gameplay footage. It's the only reason we're able to see how a lot of these games would have looked in action. If any of you have access to the .jar files for some of these games, please upload them somewhere and share in the comments. While a lot of them are low quality, it's still a part of Sonic's history, and if you love the character as much as I do, we should do our best to preserve every game you start in. Yes, even the bad ones. If you have something to add, something I missed, or a unique insight, please share in the comments, I'd really appreciate it. And if you enjoy in-depth looks at Sonic games, please drop this video a like and consider checking out some of my other Sonic videos. Also, I've been more active on Twitter, so be sure to follow me there for updates on videos and whatnot. Other than that, have a great day, I will see you later.